I'm lucky to have been chosen to record here at the Microsoft studio in advance of the MVP Summit. The summit is going to be amazing. I just want to take this chance to show you some of the reporting that Excel is now capable of and how that relates to Power BI. So let's get started. This is a Power Pivot dashboard. I built it in Excel, and as I hope you will admit, it looks pretty good. And the fact that it's built in Power Pivot means that it's interactive. I can click on slices to change the region to north or south, and my underlying data changes. Or I can highlight all regions and show that data. So no more static reports. I can click on January, I could highlight Q1, I could highlight the first half of the year. And as you can see, all the underlying figures are changing. So it's much more user-friendly and informative than a static old printed report. And that's not all. You can do things like timeline slices. So I can change the timeline of my underlying charts, or click on slices for products such as budget or primo, or even highlight all products. And it's even more. You can highlight trends and see high points, low points, slice and dice the data by region. It really is quite amazing what you can do now. And pivot tables don't have to be boring. This is a pivot table. Conditional formatting makes it look much more than just a plain old boring table. And again, fully interactive, slice and dice it by year. And you can even add little icon sets and traffic lights. And again, they change as you change the data, as you highlight the first quarter of the year, or click on some different regions, all the underlying data changes. So this is the sort of stuff that Excel is capable of, but people just don't realize. Excel is a really powerful visualization tool. But then so is Power BI. Power BI, this is a report using the same data set. And again, you can use slices to cut the data by different years. But the really good thing about Power BI is that you can also use charts to filter data. I can click on the Primo bar and all the data changes for Primo. I can click on Standard or the East region or the North region and all the underlying figures change. You know, this makes Power BI a really powerful tool for slicing and dicing and analyzing the data. You can even drill down into a chart. So right click on this big negative variance, drill down, and it's the Primo product. I can even find out when or what region that relates to, drill down further. Oh look, it's the East region for the Primo product that had that terrible month. So this sort of stuff makes analysis so much easier. And before I leave Power BI, I just want to show you something really quickly, one of the new features. It's called Q&A, and it helps you build charts. So all I have to do these days is double click on my white empty canvas and start typing something in. Actual value, then by date, even by product. So how much easier is that now? I can just resize this chart. And if that doesn't impress you, then this surely will. I want to work out why there was an increase. So I go right click, analyze and explain the increase, and it builds a waterfall chart for you. You know, that's something that used to take ages in Excel, and now Power BI can do it at a right click. And here it's showing me that the big increase was due to the East region. That's actually masking a big decrease in the South. So it's giving you insights into your data. You know, this stuff is amazing. And you can then publish this to the Power BI service, share it with the rest of your business, and they can access this report via any device. You know, Power BI really is quite amazing in terms of the analysis and the sharing of information throughout your business. So I'm going to show you quickly how you can build this sort of report in Excel. So I'm going to start off with a plain old data set. I've got location code, cost center code, dates and amounts, and I'm now going to build a pivot report. So here's a traditional pivot table. Looks a little bit dull. It's got cost center codes down the side, and I'd probably have to add some lookups or some index matches to give me cost center name. I'd have to group my dates together. You know, that's all well and good, but there's a better way these days, and that's with Power Pivot. Because in this Excel file, I've actually got some lookup tables or some mapping tables. So here's my one for cost center. So I've got cost center code and cost center name. I've got location code and location name. And what I can do now, because I've loaded these tables into Power Pivot, I've got access to those tables as well. So here we go. I click on all. I've got my cost center, and I can drag in cost center name. And no formulas in sight. I'll just resize this column. And then I can drag in something else, like maybe month. And I've pre-sorted my month column to be by fiscal year. So here's my July through August and September and October. That's really difficult with a normal pivot table. Let's add a slicer. I showed you slicers earlier. It's a simple right click. Here's fiscal year. I'll just resize that slightly. And now my pivot table is driven by my slicer. So I can click on 2014 or 2013 and my data changes. I'll add another one for location. So I can type in the search box for location name. And I'll just right click on that and add that as a slicer. And now I can slice and dice my data by fiscal year or by Melbourne, Perth, Sydney, wherever I want to visualize my data by. So your reports immediately become so much more interactive. It's really powerful. So the next thing, I want to bring in some budget data. That's my actuals. Here's some budget data. So I'm going to use Power Query to tap into an Excel file that contains my budget. So I'm going to go from File, from Workbook, and I'm going to pull in the data from the budget matrix. So here it is. It is Power Query. This is how you pull data in. I'm going to double click on the sheet called Budget, and the Power Query editor launches. Now Power Query, if you haven't tried it, it's absolutely amazing. It's a godsend. It'll save you so much time. I'm going to click on a button to use my first row as my headers, and then I'm going to use the amazing unpivot feature. So highlight the first two columns, unpivot, and that's all my columns are now converted into a single month column. But it's called attribute, and it's just text. That's not actually a date. So how do I get the month end out of that column? Well, I can use a feature called column from examples. So I'm going to go from selection, and I just start typing 31 for July, and there it is. It's given me an option of end of month from the attribute column. Press enter, and it's done it. That's absolutely outstanding. Here we go. We've got all the dates, month ends. I can just double click on the heading, change it to date, and that's done. That would take so long normally writing formulas. I don't need this attribute column anymore. So once my column's loaded in, I can right click on attribute and just remove that column. And now I can just format them. So my value column is going to be a decimal number, for example. And I'll then change my location code to text. Cost center code, I'll change that to text as well. And now I'm ready to load that data. It's all cleaned up, and that's what Power Query or Get and Transform does. But where's it getting loaded to? It's actually loading into Power Pivot. So let's take a look at that. We go to the Power Pivot tab, we click on Manage, and then I'm going to go into Diagram View. And I've already loaded in my actuals and my lookup tables previously, but here's my budget table. And rather than doing VLOOKUPs or index matches, it's a simple drag and drop, location code to location code, cost center code up to cost center code. That could be 1 million, 2 million VLOOKUPs done instantly. So much easier, and there's date to date. So now I can add a quick measure or calculation to my pivot tables for budget. So I just simply right click, type in budget, and that's going to be the sum of my budget column. I'm then going to format that as a number with a comma for a separator, and I just tick it, and there's my budget data. And again, controlled by my slicers. So I can click on Melbourne or Perth, and my budget changes. So one last thing, I'm going to do a variance measure. So same idea, right click, add a measure. Here's my measure name, variance. It's the simple actual measure minus the budget measure. That is just so simple. Then I'm going to format that as a number with a 1000 separator, and I can tick that, and it's in my pivot table. And again, controlled by my slicers. And the real powerful thing is you don't even need actual and budget in your pivot table. So I'm dragging out actuals, I'm dragging out budget, and here's my variance on its own working. I can now add a quick chart. Here's a pivot chart. Let's do a line chart. Here it goes. And we can use some pre-built formatting. Excellent. And now my chart, because it's linked to my pivot table, is also controlled by my slicers. And I've created a quick interactive report from many different sources of data. And that's the beauty of Power Query and Power Pivot. And I can just click refresh and load that data in again for next month. So that's a quick snapshot. Hope you find it useful. Excel and Power BI, check them out. And thanks to the guys here at the Microsoft Studios for letting me record.